Welcome to Really This Week in History. I'm your host, Daniel Price. For anyone who has ever thought, man, we are living through history, this podcast is designed to prove you right. Weekly, a guest and I will discuss a current event, its historical context, and how it may be viewed by future historians. This episode delves into speculation of cryptocurrencies. Any projection of value is for discussion's sake only and is not intended to be, nor does it claim to be, investment advice. I recorded, edited, and published this podcast using the free Anchor app. It combines all the tools you need to create your own podcast with little to no experience of your own. Not only does it allow you to record right in the app, it also helps you distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more services. You can even make money from your podcast with sponsored ads with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. On Monday this week, Elon Musk announced that Tesla purchased $1.5 billion in Bitcoin and would soon start accepting the cryptocurrency as a form of payments for its products. With me to discuss the story is Elias Ahonen, author of Blockland, 21 Stories of Bitcoin, Blockchain, and Cryptocurrency, and one of the first Bitcoin historians, according to Bitcoin.com. He is in Finland, so there is a little bit of a delay, so that will happen from time to time. There might be some dead silence. Elias, thanks so much for spending some time with me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So when you first saw this story that Elon Musk and Tesla were investing, it's right around 8% of their cash on hand in Bitcoin. What was your initial thought?
I'm obviously used to seeing all kinds of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency headlines day in and day out, and you get kind of numb to it. But this one, it was like a lightning strike. It was kind of this is the big one.
Right. So, we have a lot of big investors in Bitcoin. The Winklevoss twins are probably the most well-known outside of Musk. But it seems that a lot of investors either got in early, not that Elon Musk didn't, or have, made smaller purchases over time. But this size purchase, is this something that we've seen before?
We have not. The closest one that we can really look at is MicroStrategy, which was a few months ago. I can't recall exactly how much it was, but we were talking close to the same amount as Tesla did, but a little earlier. So back then it was some hundreds of millions of dollars, and they went in kind of all in.
Right. So we saw this happen, and a day or two later, Michael Burry, the investor made famous by the movie The Big Short, said that this was a distraction, that Tesla was under investigation for some quality issues in China, and it was a look over here kind of story, that Elon Musk was just trying to distract. Obviously, you aren't Elon Musk. I'm not Elon Musk. But is this the kind of thing that, in your experience, you've seen this kind of investment as anything other than a strong belief in Bitcoin?
Well, I think we need to start off from the perspective that Mr. Musk is, a fairly intelligent guy. So I wouldn't put it outside of his scope to use something like this strategically to divert attention from something. And so on and so forth. So I don't necessarily disagree with Michael Burry on this piece. Another similar criticism that I've read is that Tesla is overvalued, according to a good number of analysts, and they view the Bitcoin purchase as kind of something that would again keep the price up, or at least be able to take some of that money off the table, almost like a share buyback. And if I'm correct, I think we're actually down 6% or so from the date that Tesla bought the Bitcoin as far as Tesla shares go. So I wouldn't be that surprised again if this is done in a strategic way. But I think the other part of the argument is, well, is this all just a scam? And as I think we could read what Mr. Burry was suggesting, and I don't think that's the case. Based on my interpretation of Elon's tweets, it does seem that he is, I guess the word that I'm looking for is sincere in his quote unquote faith in Bitcoin. It does seem that Tesla bought the Bitcoins for a long-term investment, and I do believe that there is a belief within the company that that's going to be a good investment long-term. So I would agree with him slightly, but say that, well, that's probably only part of the picture.
Okay. And another thing that he said in kind of the same series of tweets is that Dogecoin, its record price right now is a signal of a massive cryptocurrency bubble. He would be one that is very familiar with bubbles in industry. The Big Short was about the bubble and the housing crisis that led from it, that came from it. You've been, watching Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies longer than most people on this earth. What is your view on the potential for a cryptocurrency bubble bursting anytime soon? Without, we are not a financial recommendation show, and all of this is just not intended to steer investment by anyone. I do want to say
that. Thank you, and thanks for that clarification. Again, it's I have to say it's a relative truth. I mean, cryptocurrency, if we look at the history of cryptocurrency back from 2009 or 10, when Bitcoin first started trading in any kind of way that was trackable, I think really not even in 2010, it's been characterized by a market movement that shows a bit of a buildup, of quiet buildup. Then there's a fairly succinct phase where there's a lot of interest being generated. It goes up fairly steadily, and then it shoots up into a whole entire a new paradigm that no one could imagine before. And then soon after that, it crashes again. People panic, but the place where it crashes to and settles is still in a new level, so to say, 10x or whatever, something like that of the previous low or the previous place where the price settled. So if we look at it that way, the first one that I was around for, and there were other ones, was back in 2013 when we went from about $100 to $1,000 and then down to something like 300 or so. The second one, we went up from the below $1,000 range, all the way up to almost 20,000 USD, or was it 15? Sometimes I get my currencies mixed up. And then we settled again in the thousands, and during the Corona crisis, it went as low as 3,000 and change, and now we're pushing 50,000. So yeah, we have seen this kind of pattern before, and if we look back on history, we can say that, well, yes, now we're on the uptrend, but how high that's going to go and where it's going to settle, we don't know yet. If we had to use that same kind of log scale as before, it would point to a price, in the six figures for this quote unquote bubble. Wow. We hear several different takes. We've seen quoting certain analysts from some of the bigger banks, and I don't want to say any specific numbers, but these numbers in the low 100,000s, low, beginning with 200 and even 300,000 have been suggested by big names like Guggenheim and so on. But again, if we get to that point where it settle at 10,000, 50,000 or something more, I don't know. So I guess the short answer is that yes, there's a bubble. Personally, I don't think we're close to it popping yet, at least in relative terms. But again, it will be very unstable, and of course I could be wrong.
right? So back almost 11 years ago, a guy ordered a couple Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. And once Tesla starts accepting these payments, if they're accepting them for the vehicles themselves, you will likely be able to buy at least one Tesla or another for a Bitcoin. You've been around for all of it. Like we mentioned earlier, you released Blockland in January. The growth of this cryptocurrency is something that people have heard about for a decade now. But the story of Bitcoin is something that a lot of people don't know. What will people learn from Blockland that they may not know? Or is there one story in particular that you think is most enlightening to people?
Excuse me. So I think within Blockland, it's hard to summarize because there's really so many stories. It's almost like an entire mythology of an industry where you have the stories first of the funders. You look at Satoshi, who is the anonymous funder, creator of Bitcoin. You have some of the early, I don't know what we might call them, disciples, you could almost say, of Satoshi, who took on the project and essentially, you could almost see as co-founders in a way, what the ideological views and so on of them were, because again, cryptocurrency came out of a countercultural, even anti-government type of group. It did not come from a university. It wasn't something that was developed at a lab at a business school, at least that we know of. So I think that's what is really interesting as a technology, because often we think of technology as being created within institutional structures, and that's what makes Bitcoin and cryptocurrency a little bit of a underdog, so to say, at least at this point still. As far as stories go, well, there's a lot of very good things. I mean, one thing is that we look at all the different early cryptocurrencies and the way they interacted together. We have Dogecoin or Dogecoin, which came out in 2013, which coincidentally has been connected with this whole Elon Musk Bitcoin drama, because Elon Musk recently was pumping Dogecoin on Twitter. Actually, about a year or so back, maybe more than that, he actually put his bio on Twitter as being the CEO of Dogecoin, which is, of course, a position that does not exist. So that's an interesting story, which I actually mentioned in the book. And of course, the book came out long before Tesla bought Bitcoin, so it's already out of date, of course, as these things go.
And another part of kind of the history, the kind of the underbelly of Bitcoin is the dark web side of it. I know nothing of the dark web other than I don't know how to access it, and I don't care to. But how important has the unseen parts of the web and the unseen parts of the industry been to Bitcoin's success?
I would argue that it's been very important, and even of prime importance. I actually have a chapter in Blockland. It's called Bitcoin's Coming of Age, Chapter 3. And what that deals with is two things. Firstly, the first exchange, which was called Mt. Gox, which ended up collapsing. And I think something like a huge percentage of Bitcoin that was in circulation was lost at the time. But the other aspect of the chapter is the dark web, and how that essentially was the first use case and proof of concept for Bitcoin. Because early on, nobody needed Bitcoin. People could use it theoretically, but there wasn't really a driving force behind it. And that driving force came from people who wanted to, sell drugs on the internet and couldn't obviously use PayPal or credit cards. So I remember I was a political science student in Canada, and I had heard about this Bitcoin phenomenon, and someone told me about the dark web. I went in there and I went to look at, what is this about? And I saw that, here there is a market where you can buy, 10 kilos of Colombian Coke for Bitcoin, and or a rocket launcher. and
Wow.
no government can stop that. And I was like, well, I mean, what does this mean? Like, this seems like a pretty big thing. And that's actually how I came to realize or came to the view that, this is very literally a disruptive technology that is worth study and worthy of study. So the thesis of that chapter is that Bitcoin, after it, after kind of exiting childhood, where it was just a theoretical thing where people used it to buy pizzas, it became a teenager who was kind of a delinquent, a troubled young, young person who didn't really care for the law, didn't really fit in at all, had a very rebellious streak, and was just kind of doing these things that obviously was landing in a lot of trouble. And the funny thing that happened is that around the same time, the Silk Road was the biggest of these dark web marketplaces, drug marketplaces, that it got raided, and the person who was running it ended up getting life in prison. And around the same time, the exchange, which I mentioned, Mt. Gox, collapsed and all the Bitcoins were gone. And you would think that this is the moment where, the Bitcoin experiment is over. And I myself was like, okay, this is it. That was fun. But then when I realized a month later that it's still around, the price has not gone to zero, that's when you could say that that's when I began to believe that this is the future. If this didn't destroy it, maybe nothing will. And the interesting thing is that the way the story ends is that once the Silk Road marketplace was seized by the U.S. authorities, they confiscated the bitcoins, from that were held in the accounts of that marketplace, and they actually auctioned off those bitcoins. So it was actually the United States government that legitimized Bitcoin, because, well, why would the U.S. Marshals sell something that's illegal? So that was essentially its exit from this teenage phase into something that was actually a part of society.
Yeah, so I mean, it's no longer an awkward teenager. Full adulthood, I think, seems to be here. When we are looking back on February of 2021 and this investment and the decision by a major automobile manufacturer to accept payments for its vehicles by Bitcoin, is this news story a watershed moment? Are we going to see, do you think, more and more? I think I did see one of the major credit card companies announced that they will soon be accepting Bitcoin in one form or another. Is this legitimization by large industry something that we're going to see continue quickly? And is Tesla's involvement something that historically will be taught as an important moment?
Yeah, I think watershed moment is the best way to describe this. The reason for that is that up until this moment, more or less anyone could feign ignorance, so to say, of Bitcoin at the very least. Someone could say, "Oh, a Bitcoin, I haven't heard of that in years. Is that thing still dead? I thought that thing was dead. I think, I'm surprised it's still around. Can you even buy anything with it?" And you hear these kinds of arguments and thought processes from very advanced people, which, fair enough. It's not their area of interest. It's not their area of expertise, and it's not something that they would naturally learn about in their circles. But when Tesla, which is the biggest car maker, I believe it's actually more valuable than maybe the 4 or 5 top car makers in the world put together, and which is run by the the richest men in the world, it more or less it removes a lot of these kinds of automatic disqualifications that someone might have, and it more or less commands and demands comment, and it commands to be taken seriously because most people don't think that the richest person in the world is an idiot. Of course, some people do when they write about it and they call him an idiot, but I don't know if that is, I mean, you've got a reporter who is a reporter calling Musk an idiot, so I don't know who I trust on that, frankly. But so yeah, that's the thing, and Elon Musk obviously is someone that all kinds of CEOs are looking up to, and if Tesla could do it, then it more or less gives any company the ability to potentially do the same thing. So I think what we're going to see, despite others, not thinking it so, we're going to see larger companies, smaller companies as well, adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets in various capacities. And I think that I think shareholder interest and allowance, or at least of that, will now be at the level where that's possible. I mean, if we extrapolate even further, and obviously some people will think I'm a crackpot for saying this, but I do think that we're soon getting to the point where governments will want to be buying Bitcoin as well in some capacity, whether through a central bank or so on. And what I actually saw just today, or was it yesterday, there was a deliberation within the Senate of Nigeria. And I have this quote up just on my Twitter here, Elias _Ahonen. You can definitely follow me. This guy, Senator Sani Musa, he said, quote, "The technology is so strong that I don't see the kind of regulation that we can do. Bitcoin has made our currency almost useless or valueless." I mean, that's the kind of comment that a watershed moment like this commands. And I think there's going to be, if we look at Bitcoin history 50 years from now, wherever it goes, probably we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of the first decade, which is pre-Tesla or pre-Musk, and then after that.
Well, one thing that you soon will be able to buy with Bitcoin, as we discussed, is a Tesla vehicle, it seems. One thing you can currently buy through coin payments is Blockland on Cryptonomist.com. I hope I'm saying that right. Also available on Amazon and wherever fine books are sold, I'm sure. Elias Ahonen, thanks so much for being with me. Really appreciate your time and your perspective, which is far superior to mine.
It's an absolute pleasure. It was great to be here, Daniel.
And thanks to everyone at home for joining us. I hope today's conversation was as enlightening for you as it was for me. If you're enjoying this series and would like to contribute to its cause, please share this episode on social media. And if you are particularly inclined, you can financially support the podcast at anchor.fm/RTWI history/support. That's anchor.fm/RTWI history/support. Please come back next week when we will be discussing more of the history we live through every day.